Hi, this is Mark, and welcome to episode 40 of Nerdology. And my very special guest today is Mr. Brendan Jones.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
That's not my real voice.
Brendan...
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, a little bit Muppety there, which is no bad thing.
Yay!
Arm flailing. Brendan is from, you've got a list of podcasts and YouTube channels as long as you're on, but the one I know you best from is Flight Through Entirety, which is an amazing podcast. Do you want to give that a little plug before we get going?
Yeah, so Flight Through Entirety is a Doctor Who podcast where we have been making our way through every televised Doctor Who story in broadcast order from 1963 onwards. So we're currently, we just released episode 161, which was our retrospective of David Tennant's first year in the role, so series 2 of the revived series. It's actually our 162nd episode because I decided to start with an episode 0, as you do.
Well, you know, it helps to sort of set the tone for what you're going to get, doesn't it?
That's right. So I'm no longer on every episode. So I was on every episode. I was on every episode of the classic series. And for the new series, I sort of said, I'll do like 3 or 4 per season, per series. And so there's that. We also have Bondfinger.
Yes.
Which has done commentary podcasts on every James Bond film, including 2 on Casino Royale 1967.
Wow.
And, it's basically just an excuse to get drunk and talk about James Bond films. And spinning off from that, we have Jodie into Terror, which was our flashcast for the Jodie Whittaker era, because we realised the way we're proceeding with FTE, we wouldn't get to Jodie Whittaker until, I think we figured 2023. So so we decided to jump ahead a bit and just give our live reactions. And sort of the running gag on our podcast is whenever we mention another series, be it Star Trek, be it Sapphire and Steel, be it Gardening Australia, someone, usually James, will say, when are we doing the Gardening Australia podcast? And
it's only a matter of time.
Exactly. But the response comes, we're doing it now. But it's just become a bit of a running gag because, FTE's the main one. Bondfinger's on a bit of hiatus at the moment. We're occasionally doing other spy-related things. And, of course, Jodie into Terror will return next year. But
excellent.
Yeah, there was 3 months there where we had 3 different podcasts running.
Well, luckily, I really like all of your shows, so that's great for the listener.
Oh, thank you.
And you also have a YouTube channel as well.
Oh, yes, I do. I need to update that more. But yes, so my YouTube channel can be found by searching for Brandy Nigma. So Brandy is in the drink, Nigma. I'm trying to change it to Brandy Bongos, which is my new Twitter
obviously,
handle.
why wouldn't you?
But yeah, YouTube have this weird stuff with not being able to change names on things. But my main thing that I do there is a thing called Doctor Who in 10 Seconds, where I...
Yeah, they're really great.
Thank you, where I describe Doctor Who plots in 10 seconds. Or fewer. I think the only one I've really gone over on was Evil of the Daleks, which ended up being 13 very breathless seconds.
Well, that's a disgrace. I think you should just get rid of your channel now, delete the whole thing.
I know. I'm not... I'm unworthy of the diamond logo. Throw me across the train. Terrence Dix is never to write my introduction.
I think the thing that will always live with me is the image of you spinning on an office chair dressed as Zoe from the second Doctor's era in a sparkly catsuit.
That catsuit has travelled. I've worn that... I shan't name drop, but I have worn that to a big Finnish writer's birthday party. That's what it was originally created for. I've worn it for that video I've worn it to a convention, and I've worn it on a gay cruise for a disco party where I got lots of compliments. It does need a wash though, because it's hand wash only.
Oh, yeah. Too much information there, Brendan.
No. Just it's very hot in Australia. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fine.
Nothing untoward. This isn't Bondfinger.
No. Anyway, enough of all that.
Yes.
The reason we've got you on for this show, we got chatting, and we're both quite avid gamers, and we figured it'd be good to cover that, because it's something I've been interested in for so many years, and I've never really covered it on the podcast before, so I figured it would be just something a little bit different.
Yeah, fantastic.
And we're both fans of the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, very much so. Absolutely love it.
I mean, my personal gaming history goes back, because I'm very old, back to the sort of early 80s, and the sort of birth of video games, certainly in the home for a lot of kids of my generation, was the old classic Sinclair ZX Spectrum computer. I have friends at work who are in their 20s, and you have to explain to them you had to load the games via audio cassette, and you'd have to wait for 15-20 minutes for it to load, and it blows their minds. But that was a huge thing in the UK. I think it was quite big in South America as well, but I don't think it really translated that far beyond the UK, maybe a little bit of Europe, and then sort of progressed onto the Commodore 64, which is another one of those 8-bit machines. That had a newfangled floppy disk drive with cardboard discs, which was, that was the height of technology at the time. And then, a succession of various consoles. I missed out on the original Nintendo Entertainment System, so my first machine would have been the Sega Master System. And then onto the Mega Drive, and then Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, PlayStation. That was a huge change in the whole gaming stratosphere. As soon as that launched, that just totally, in my mind, it gave people a totally different idea of what gaming was, and it was no longer thought of as for the kids anymore. It was something that, in inverted commas, grown-ups could do too. And then, succession of other machines, and now right up to date with the Nintendo Switch, which I think is such a great idea. I think Nintendo, coming off the back of the rather lackluster sales for the Wii U, I think they really had to really come up with something really good to really get themselves back on track, and I think they succeeded this time round. I don't know. What's your own personal history? How far back do you go?
I go far. I go back just about as far as you do. You're right in that I don't think the Spectrum ever came to Australia in a big commercial way. I remember finding out about the Spectrum about 10 years ago and being intrigued and seeing the graphics and whatnot. And, jumping around a bit, on the Switch now is the Spectrum game Saboteur.
Sweet.
Yeah, which I have been enjoying playing. The controls are very different and very stiff compared to modern fluid gaming. But that is part of it. Certainly, my family did have a Commodore 64. And I remember my cousin had one as well, and my cousin's tape drive, the counter didn't work properly.
Oh, no.
And so, as well as having to load from tape, of course, sometimes you would have to go to a certain point on the tape to load that part. And I remember he got very good at counting as he was fast-forwarding the tape to get to a certain point. Didn't always work, but he, considering the counter wasn't moving, he did very well.
Wow.
So, but the first We also had a Vectrex.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they were cool.
Yeah, and I am pretty sure that is still in my parents' garage somewhere. I saw one recently at a retro gaming fair here and almost picked it up out of pure nostalgia, but it was $400.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But the first console that was a gift to me was the original Nintendo Entertainment System,
Right.
which my cousin had, and I played Super Mario Brothers 2 there and just got obsessed. So my parents bought me one for Christmas. And then what I would do when the new Nintendo consoles came out, because I am just a Nintendo obsessive, I would trade up. So I would sell my existing console and use birthday money and whatnot to buy the new console. So that's how I bought my SNES. My SNES, along with other things in our house, were then burgled. And with the insurance money, I bought the Nintendo 64. When the GameCube came out, I sold the Nintendo 64 to my brother-in-law for my nephews and bought the GameCube on launch day. The Wii, I didn't buy on launch day. I bought, 2 years afterwards when I moved to the UK.
Yeah.
The Wii U, I bought on launch day because that was going to be an amazing success of a console with amazing
I think it had some really good games, but I'm not sure what was going on in their minds with the whole marketing of it. And,
yeah.
But I think a lot of people got confused because they thought it was like another add-on, because the original Wii had so many things like a balance board and all these other things.
Exactly.
And I think whether that, if they'd maybe given it a totally different name, it might have perhaps had a slightly better life.
Or even the Wii 2. People would have got that because it got, the PlayStation has numerical iterations. But that brings us up to the Switch. But also, about 10 years ago, when I bought the Wii and was living in the UK, which had a much larger gaming scene and still has a much larger gaming scene than Australia, I was suddenly able to start rebuilding my retro collection. And so I have quite a sizable retro collection now. I have about 300 cartridges and PS1 discs.
Wow.
Some Saturn, some Dreamcast. It's mostly Nintendo, but that is also where my Sega collection started, because I had Nintendo and my nearest cousin had Sega.
Right.
So rather than having to have both, we could play each other's systems that way.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I have very fond memories of the Sega Master System. And, as an adult, I can look at it critically and think, actually, in some ways, this surpasses the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's got a much brighter color palette. It has far superior sound. And I recently rebought Alex Kidd in Miracle World on the Switch and finished that for the first time. So, started playing it 30 years ago and finished it for the first time.
Well, you can't rush these things.
No. With I'm not too proud to say, with prodigious use of the rewind button.
Oh, well, as you get a bit older, the old reflexes start to wane somewhat.
That's right.
But no, I think going back to the 16-bit era, I think that's where it really started to take off for me. I think they both had, Sega and Nintendo both had some really good titles, and I think they appeal to different people. So the Mega Drive was very much centered around, or Genesis abroad. I don't know, did you guys get the Mega Drive, or was it the Genesis over there?
We got the Mega Drive.
Yeah, of course, that's the proper name for it.
That's right.
So you had a lot of arcade ports, which were, I'd lap those up. Some of those were great. And then you had the SNES, which had a lot of really unusual titles, and you had the whole Mode 7 thing as well, which really gave it a totally different edge on certain games. So things like Pilot Wings, I loved to bits. That was such a great little game.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, things like Mario Kart, yeah, people take it for granted now, but that was such a massive game at the time. And then, of course, Nintendo stole a march on Sega by getting the first bash at Street Fighter 2. And I think that was the killer game for the SNES that really brought a lot of people over to Nintendo that might have been more hardcore Sega fans. And that was such a great conversion.
Yeah,
I don't know how many hours I would have wasted on that, but such a great game.
Like, yeah, I'm not good at fighting games, but sort of Christmas holidays when a few of we cousins were staying with our nan, it'd be Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat.
Nice.
All the day long on the SNES. And of course, actual real life arguments would start. And my nan didn't know much about technology, but she knew enough to take the power cable away if we were acting up. Yeah.
Good old nan. Yeah, it sounded like she had the right idea. And of course, on the Nintendo version, I think am I right in saying they didn't have blood on Mortal Kombat?
That's right, it was sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was officially sweat or if it was dust, but we rationalized that it was sweat.
So did they still have all of the decapitations and all that kind of stuff, the finishing moves?
I believe so, but to be honest, I was kind of terrible at it, so I could never do those.
Yeah, so was I, to be honest.
It's like
it strikes me as quite funny that they, not include the blood, but have someone having their head ripped out and their spine hanging out and what have you.
Yeah. I used to play as Raiden, sort of E Honda and Chun-Li, because they're sort of special moves. So for Raiden, I still remember he had a sort of battering ram move where he flew across the stage, which was back forward.
That's right.
And he had teleportation, which was down up. And I could do those. It's just anything, similar to the Hadouken, which was kind of a sweep and then a button.
That's right.
Couldn't do. And then in Street Fighter, I'd be E Honda or Chun-Li or Blanca, because you could spam one of the attack buttons, and that would be your special attack. So I'd just sit in a corner with Chun-Li's sort of lightning kick or whatever it was. Just kick, and then of course my cousin would sweep the leg, and I'd be dead.
You'd be out for the count.
Yeah.
So in terms of the Switch, we were chatting before recording, and we were talking about maybe our sort of favourite games, the ones we'd really recommend. So have you got a few there that we're probably going to have a few similar ones, I would guess, but are there any you want to start us off with that you think are really worth getting?
Yeah, certainly. I'll start off with a sort of a less common one, and something that people complain about with the Switch is there's so much on the store and it's not curated very well. So people might have missed this one. It's called Death Squared.
Okay.
And it's a cooperative puzzle game in which each player controls a different coloured boxy robot. And so it's 2 or 4 players. So in the 2-player mode, one of you is a red robot, one of you is a blue robot, and you have to navigate puzzles and hazards together. And there's things like there's switches that only the blue robot can press, and only the red. There are semi-transparent blocks that only the blue robot can pass through and the red can't. And, of course, there's spikes of death and things that'll push you off into the void and whatnot. But the idea is each of you is trying to get to your own coloured goal. Now, both my fiancé and I have Switches, but whereas I'm sort of a gaming jack of most trades, like there's lots of different games I play, my partner tends to get obsessed with 1 or 2 games. So his main obsession is Splatoon, which I will talk about.
I love Splatoon so much. But anyway, we'll get on to that later. Yeah,
I'll talk about that later. But this is a game we can play together because he's not into platformers, which are my main kind of gaming. We've tried to play Lego games together, and we get very annoyed with each other just because we have very different play styles. But yeah, this is one we can actually play together. And even though we get frustrated with the game, not with each
rather
other.
than each other.
And there's
Yeah,
sort of
that's good.
yeah, and you get dropped into each level, and you don't necessarily know what the switches do. So one of you will say, "Okay, I'm going to go off and explore." And you stay there. And the problem is they stay there. You go and press your button, and your button opens a
Yeah.
path for them, but not before it creates spikes underneath the other player that kills them. And so, sorry, darling, I didn't mean to kill you.
Didn't mean to impale you.
Exactly. It's quite a common phrase in Death Squared. We do have to play it on mute because it kind of has... and this is a common indie game thing. It kind of has an annoying knowing narrator who is it's the scientist putting you through these these things. But the gameplay itself is really solid. I actually have a great website here called eShop-Prices, where you can look up what things cost in different regions. So
yeah, because that's one of the things with the Switch, isn't it? You can, am I right in saying you can go to, they're not region locked, so you can effectively sign into an eShop in another country and then download games to your Switch from there and it'll still play.
Exactly right. So on a recent trip to Japan, there was a game I wanted there, so I bought an eShop card there, which took about 20 minutes because the guy in the shop wanted to let me know that it was only for a Japanese account, but he didn't speak any English and I didn't speak any Japanese.
Oh, no.
So he had to call his supervisor, and I had to talk to his supervisor who spoke English. And yeah, they were just really kindly trying to inform me that it wouldn't work in Australia, and I really had to inform them that I had a Japanese account. But I just wanted to let your listeners know that Death Squared currently costs £12 in the UK. But if you want to get it cheaper, get yourself an Australian eShop account where it costs $15, which is about £8 at this stage. So it's not, it's not that much of a difference. But yeah, this is... yeah.
It all helps. That sounds really good. It sounds... One of the things I really like about the Switch is Nintendo, who over previous generations had a pretty much closed shop. They'd allow third parties in, but it was very much policed by them. They've now seemed to have gone completely the other way and just really opened it up to everyone, which means, as you said, the eShop is full of stuff, which is great in one way, but it does mean you're having to pick through a fair amount of clunkers before you actually get to the really good stuff. A lot of the things you were describing there in that game, my son's 5, so he's kind of getting to that point where he's really into gaming, particularly on the Switch. Obviously, we're careful about the kind of games he gets to play.
Of course.
There's one called Conduct Together. I don't know if you're aware of that one.
Oh, no, I don't think I've heard of that.
Yeah, so I downloaded that having seen some parents playing it on a YouTube channel, and I thought it looked like a lot of fun. So you have it's very cutesy kind of graphics. It looks a bit 16-bit, which just drew me in straight away because I love all the retro stuff. And it's an overhead view, and you have a variety of different levels that have gradually more and more sophisticated train tracks. And it's something that you play as a pair. So I think you can have up to 4 players on it. So you detach the Joy-Cons, you each have a Joy-Con. One of you is controlling the points on the track, and the other one is controlling the trains. You cannot allow the trains to touch each other, otherwise they will explode. So as well as having the trains that you're controlling, there are also computer-operated trains and other various things that try to collide with you, and you have passengers that are a particular colour that you have to drop to a particular coloured station. So you have to make sure you're getting your quota of passengers to the correct station within the time limit. Otherwise, you fail the level. And it's really simple, but it's very addictive. And it gets really super, super tricky on the levels as you progress. So it's a lot of fun. I don't think it was stupidly expensive. I can't remember off the top of my head now, but I really enjoyed that. And it's just a fun one we can pick up and play. So I'd certainly recommend that one as a more of an indie title.
Yeah, sounds great. And actually, I might recommend that to James from our Bondfinger podcast, because he he works in town planning and he quite enjoys
Oh, right.
games that involve planning, but also games that involve trains. So yes, I'll do. And
That sounds like it's right up his street.
yeah, he's been obsessing recently over Harry Potter Lego,
Yeah.
but yes, I think that will be right up his street,
Oh,
or
excellent.
down his track, as the case may be.
So what else have you got for us?
So something else I absolutely love, and there is a video review of this on my YouTube channel, because we have a gaming TV show here called Good Game, now Good Game Spawn Point, and they held open auditions for a new host 2 years ago. Now, obviously, I didn't get the gig, but I really enjoyed making this review. And this is Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap. And it's a remake of a Sega Master System game.
Yeah.
It does have the original graphics and sound, but...
I saw that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. At a button toggle, so I think it's one of the trigger buttons for the graphics and one of the thumbsticks for the sound, you can switch to hand-drawn graphics and a fully orchestrated soundtrack.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, the gameplay stays the same. There's been some minor updates to the gameplay, but really not that much, because the original game itself was very fluid. So it picks up... Now, the Wonder Boy series is quite convoluted. There's pretty much 2 Wonder Boy 3s.
Okay, that's not confusing at all.
No, not at all. Pretty much Sega, and I think it was Westone, the original publishers. At that point, the first 2 Wonder Boy games had been in arcades and then ported to the Sega Master System.
Yeah.
With Wonder Boy 3, one department made an arcade game and one department made a console game at the same time, which is why there's 2 Wonder Boy 3s. Now, with this remake, because Wonder Boy 1 and 2 weren't remade, this is just called Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap. The original creator was involved as a creative consultant. I believe this was made by a team in France, because, as we kind of referred to earlier, the Master System really took off in the UK and Europe.
Yeah.
In a way it didn't in America.
No, the NES was really, hot over there, wasn't it?
Yeah. In Australia, it seemed to be kind of even between the two, but I do remember as a kid, the Sega Master System was very often given away as a prize on game shows. So it did. The Sega Master System did have a big public perception here, but I think things were more even. But yeah, Wonder Boy, there are games and visuals that, in my mind, conjure the word juicy. It's like...
Okay, expand.
It's like biting into an orange or a mandarin and just getting flooded with flavour. And that's what I feel about Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap, especially playing it with the new graphics modes and the new sound. It is just so flavourful. And the style of gaming is that arcade platformer style, so you're constantly moving forward. There is a really interesting weapon system in that you have your basic attack, but you also have a whole collection of secondary weapons that you switch between. I think I say in my video review my favourite's the boomerang, because so long as you catch it on the way back, you don't run out of them. But you can,
that's cool.
Yeah, but you can lose them as well. There's various animal transformations. So you start as a dragon that breathes fire. There's a mouse that crawls up a wall. As an eagle, you can fly. And honorary mention, around the same time as there was a team recreating this, there was another team who decided to go down the role of making a spiritual successor called Monster Boy. which is also out on Switch, Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. So whereas Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap stuck to the original structure of the game with 1 or 2 extra gameplay elements, it's about a 5-hour game, whereas Monster Boy, it's a whole new game and it's much, much longer. So yeah, 2 recommendations for the price of 1. They're Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap and Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom.
Oh, that's cool. And obviously, if you like the sound of the Wonder Boy game, you can go to Brendan's YouTube channel and check out the review, and you can see it in all its glory.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. We can't really go on much further without talking about Splatoon.
Yeah,
I love Splatoon
good idea.
so much. It's one of the first games I got when I got my Switch, and it is so addictive. And I think because I'd missed out on the Wii U original, I'd heard so much about it, and the people I knew who had the Wii U raved about the original so much. So when I got the Switch and I knew there was going to be a new version coming out, it was one of my first games to pick up. And I just love the variety of the gameplay and the system where you can gradually improve on your stats and kind of upgrade your player as you're going along. But it appeals to such a wide audience because you've got your full-on sort of shooter gamers who really enjoy trying to push their way into the opposition's half of the match and trying to take out players. And then you've got people who are quite happy just to get a roller out and just start covering the floor in paint in their own half, and they're quite happy to do that. But it's that whole sort of team dynamic, so everyone's kind of doing their own thing, and it's just such a clever idea for a game, and the graphics are amazing. You know, I know it's the Switch perhaps isn't quite as high tech as a PS4 or something like that, but then you've got the added bonus of having that portability, which you can't do with any other system of this sort of quality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the funny thing about graphics is, of course, as we record this, we've just had E3. And one of the big things that blew up E3 was Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk 2077. And, in the cutscenes, you've got like a photorealistic Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
But the thing is, everyone's now talking about, Keanu Reeves is in this game far more than they're talking about what the gameplay looks like. And the gameplay looks good, don't get me wrong. But I think some game companies kind of go, if we've got photorealistic graphics, we don't need to worry about gameplay so much. Whereas Nintendo is still super gameplay focused, and they did make some missteps in the Wii U era, but Splatoon was one of the best things to come out of the Wii U era.
Yeah.
And so we had the original Splatoon, and as much as I enjoy it, I've only got about 200 hours on it. My fiancé has 1,300 hours.
Wow.
As his primary character, okay? Because he's got two. He's got 2 characters.
Of course. Yeah.
Because there's these things called Splatfests in the game, where
that's right, yeah.
You've got a tournament and you have to pick a side. So he created the second character so he could play both sides within Splatoon.
Okay.
And his second character has 250 hours.
Wow.
So he has over 1,500 hours in the game. And it's
Do you actually speak to each other at all?
I know. But
that's awesome.
He gets quite embarrassed when he has to go to his friend list, because when you go to your friend list, it brings up your profile and it brings up your gaming hours.
How long you've been playing it for.
How long you've been playing it for. Yeah, and Splatoon is almost always at the top of his list. And he says, "Don't look." I'm like, "Darling, I know how much you play. I know." He gets home a few hours before me, which is where he gets most of his play time in. But yeah, what I love so much about Splatoon is back in the day on the Nintendo 64, I used to play Perfect Dark endlessly with my friends. Now, if people haven't heard of Perfect Dark, but they've heard of GoldenEye, this was
the same team, wasn't it?
Same team, this was basically the sequel to GoldenEye, but with an original character, Joanna Dark, rather than James Bond. So we used to play death matches all the time.
Yeah.
Now, of course, online shooters have become far more advanced than that, but I kind of look at conventional online shooters with, actual bullets and actual weapons, and they kind of all meld into each other, whereas Splatoon has that mechanic of having to paint the ground, and that being the main objective in the main game mode, which means, you can, as you say, go into the enemy's territory and try and wipe them out, but that is not necessarily the path to victory.
No, it's all about having that higher percentage of paint on the map.
Yeah.
When the final bell rings.
Exactly. And there are numerous different kinds of weapons. You mentioned the roller. There are also sniper-type weapons. There are weapons that emphasize that painting as opposed to stopping power. And my particular favorite weapons in the game are the arrow sprays, which are a bit of a punchline because almost every weapon in the game, it takes between 1 and 3 hits to kill the enemy, whereas the arrow spray takes at least 5.
Right.
And it's funny, we sometimes have friends around for the Splatfests, and we had a friend around who hadn't been around for a Splatfest before and saw that Rod and I were using arrow sprays and just said, arrow sprays? You're not going to kill anyone with arrow sprays. And literally during our first round, we both saved him 3 times each using the arrow sprays. He's like, oh, okay. But that's the thing. It's a game where so long as you practice and get used to your play style, there are multiple paths to victory. There's a solid single-player mode. There are different sort of competitive modes. And so if any of you out there are a fan of shooters like the Call of Duty series or even Fortnite or Overwatch, especially Overwatch, I think, is possibly the closest to Splatoon, I would recommend giving this a go.
I love it so much. I think it's probably my favourite game on the Switch. I think there's so much variety in the gameplay, and no matter what your playing style, there is something to match your style. My favourite weapon is the one that looks like the Nintendo Zapper from the original NES.
Yes.
And I get on really well with that. I seem to do pretty well on the whole with that. I'll go through spells where, because you obviously rank up as you're getting your wins, but I'll get the odd sort of barren run where it just all seems to go horribly pear-shaped, and I'll play around with various other options, but I always tend to go back to that Zapper because that's the one I seem to enjoy playing as the most.
Yeah. That's the thing. I try other weapons, but I keep going back to the arrow spray. Funny story about the Zapper, because that's one of Rod's main weapons as well.
All right.
And something I do while we're traveling overseas is that's when I do a lot of my retro game hunting, because things are a bit cheaper. And we were in Sardinia for a day last year, and I found out there was a retro game shop, and it wasn't that far from the dock when we got off the cruise ship. So it's like, hey, let's wander up and just have a look. And I did buy 1 or 2 things in there, and it was a pretty small shop though. So Rob, my fiance, just said, "Oh, I'll wait outside." And we're all, I'm all done. I come outside, and he's staring in the window. And I'm like, "What is it?" And he said, "It's the Splatoon gun." I said, "The Zapper." He said, "Yeah." I said, and he's like, "Why would they have a Splatoon gun if this is a retro shop?" I'm like, No, that's the actual Zapper from the He had no idea that it was the real light gun from the console.
Oh, bless him.
And he said, "Oh wow, I'd really like that." So I popped my head back into the shop. I said, "There's the Zapper outside. How much is that?" And they said, "Oh, that won't work on a modern television." I said, "I don't think that's going to be a problem."
No,
he doesn't actually want to use it. And they're like, "Oh, €10, done. There you go."
Oh wow, fantastic.
And the thing is, he then spent the rest of the trip sort of occasionally saying, "Oh, I hope I get it through customs okay." I'm like, it's a giant orange plastic gun with a cord attached. I think you'll be okay.
Well, you never know these days.
No, that's true. That is very true. But yeah, it's just it's
Nice,
like
I
those
like it.
it's like those stories you hear these days of, in like Microsoft Word and things, the save icon is still a 3.5-inch floppy diskette.
Yeah.
And you hear these stories of kids finding floppy disks and saying, "Hey, someone 3D printed the save icon."
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think kids these days, if they had to go through what we had to, just to get games up on the TV screen, I think they would be absolutely tearing their hair out.
Yeah.
I think they'd be amazed.
Yeah, the Fine brothers did a video of teenagers react to the Nintendo Entertainment System, and there's some absolutely adorable footage of Maisie Williams from Game of Thrones figuring out how to boot a NES cartridge.
Yeah, no, I have seen that. That's a really good channel, actually. They do tend to have some cool stuff on there.
Yeah.
I remember seeing them presented with an old school, I think it was like a 386 PC, and they had to work out how to switch it on and all that kind of stuff. And a Walkman as well. That was one of the funniest ones. So they present them with a cassette Walkman, and they're trying to work out how you skip to the next track. And it's just very, very good.
Like, no, you don't.
So it's worth a watch.
You don't get that. You want to skip to the next track? You fast forward and you learn how to count. That's what you do.
That's all we did back in the day, was learn to count and press the button.
Yeah.
So have you got another one that is on your list of must-have games?
Yes. So I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this one. And
that's intriguing.
It's been a Nintendo Switch exclusive until recently. It's just had a PC release. Mm-hmm. It's called Octopath Traveler.
Oh yeah, I've seen reviews for that.
Yeah, and so this is a game for you if you loved Phantasy Star on the Mega Drive, or Chrono Trigger or Secret of Mana on the Super Nintendo. So it's from Square Enix, who made the aforementioned Mana series and also make Final Fantasy, of course.
Yeah.
And it is that sort of top-down RPG game. It's a beautiful mix of graphic styles in that the characters are 16-bit style sprites. Mm-hmm. But they're dropped into a 3D world that looks like a model for a really good claymation film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the backgrounds look beautiful, don't they?
Yeah.
Really nicely realised.
Yeah, and if you're playing and you don't look at the characters and you look at the backgrounds, you could swear that that's an actual physical model, and that when you move through it, they've moved a camera through it. And they haven't, but it's what it feels like. It's got a turn-based battle system, as is common for these kind of RPGs. Mm-hmm. And it's got 8 characters, which is where the name Octopath comes from, because you can choose to follow any character's story, dip in and out at any given time. And the reason I say I've got a love-hate relationship with this game is... So I made it my mission, first of all, to go around and collect all the characters. You can have 4 in your party at any given time. Mm-hmm. And then I decided, right, I'm going to go to Chapter 2. And in the map, it shows you where Chapter 2 for each character is, and it shows you a recommended level. So I went for the second lowest one, which was 22. Mm-hmm. And my entire party at that stage were 22 or higher, level 22 or higher. It has a leveling system.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And the boss fight, I just kept getting killed within 5 minutes.
Oh,
just
God.
dead. So I looked up a play.
It gets a bit wearing after the 20th attempt.
Exactly. Thankfully, after you die, you can skip the cutscenes that lead you into the battle. God. But I looked up a play guide, and it's like, oh, take this character in. I thought, okay, well, she's the last character I collected, so she's not very well leveled up yet. So I went around having lots of random battles and leveling up this character to, I thought, level 20. Level 20 will be enough. Everyone else in my team is a tank. They're level 27. So I went into the boss fight. Dead. So that's when I discovered you could decide, I'm not going to do this chapter now. And I went to the lowest chapter, and that's what I'm playing at the moment. And part of the reason that I'm revisiting it so heavily now is the collection of mana has finally come out in the West, which is The Secret of Mana from the Super Nintendo, and also its prequel game, which was, I think, Final Fantasy Adventure in the US for Game Boy and Mystic Quest in Europe. And also the third game in the series, which never got a Western release. Okay. So Secret of Mana 2, which is now known as Trials of Mana, because it never had an official English name. And so that was a game similar to this. You had a total of 6 characters, and you could chop and change and have 3 in your party, and it had simultaneous 2-player multiplayer. And yeah, they are just charming. They have amazing stories. Like this one, Octopath Traveler, really doesn't shy away from having some complex characters. So each character kind of has a role. You've got a knight, you've got a huntress who can trap animals that you fight and then use them in battle against others.
Okay.
Each enemy you face has weaknesses to different weapons and different elemental spells. And they've got a shield against those. So just say it's weak against a sword and it's got a shield of 3. If you attack it with 3 sword attacks, it won't be able to move for 1 or 2 turns.
Okay, right.
And that way you can take it on. And the so the chapter I'm playing at the moment is the character Primrose, who, when you meet her, she is an erotic dancer, let's say. But it actually turns out that she is the son of a nobleman who was killed, and she is seeking retribution on his murderers. So her job is a cover, essentially. And so she's on the track of the first of 3 men.
It's quite forward-thinking, really.
Yeah. And some of the language characters the villains use to describe her in the game, it's like, okay, this game is not being backwards in how a woman in this sort of medieval style society would be treated. And it kind of addresses that in that her employer at the club, when she reveals who she really is, there is actually a line of dialogue saying, I am not your possession and never have been. And I remember taking a screen grab of that and tweeting it, just, yes, yes, this is what I came here for. And because she was the last character I unlocked, and, other characters have had tragic backstories and lost people and whatnot, I just found this really, really kind of powerful. Yeah, I'm hoping I get better at it, because I've made the deal. I've been waiting for the collection of mana from so long because I love the mana games, but I've made a deal that, okay, no, I can't just drop Octopath Traveler to play one of its antecedents. I have to finish Octopath Traveler before I can buy the collection of mana. That is my rule. But yeah, Octopath Traveler, definitely go out and buy that if you're a fan of old-style turn-based RPGs.
Well, you're probably just going to hang up the call now, but I'm not the biggest fan of RPGs. I did try back in the olden days.
Get out.
I think it was was it Final Fantasy VII that came out on the PlayStation 1?
Yes.
Which was the first one. Yeah. I tried that and I really struggled to get into it. I thought that, at the time the cutscenes and everything were really cool. But I just found the gameplay a little bit tedious, if I'm honest. I know it's held up as a real classic, and you really are going to hate me now because I have to confess, I have never played a Zelda game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You've owned all those Nintendo consoles, and that is really surprising to me. Look, I will say in sort of Octopath Traveler, I don't usually like turn-based games, but what gets me with this one is that that shield and break system, as I mentioned earlier. Oh, but okay, I'm reeling from that because just because Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is the Zelda game on Switch,
yeah, it's a huge game.
yeah, and it has one of the highest attach rates of a game ever. I think, in the first year, it somehow had a higher attach rate than consoles. Like, Nintendo was saying, we don't know how this has happened, but we've sold 1.2 copies of Breath of the Wild for every Switch.
Wow.
But yeah, I think it's dropped to like 75% of Switch owners now have Breath of the Wild. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
So maybe I need to re-evaluate my idea of what RPGs are. I mean, certainly Breath of the Wild looks stunning. Yeah, the visual side of it looks amazing. And I've heard lots of really great things from friends who've got the game, but I've just never got around to getting it.
Yeah.
And at the time of recording, E3 has just finished, and Nintendo announced about 40 million games, and right at the end of their presentation, they showed a little sneak peek of the follow-up to Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
So maybe I need to pull my finger out and give it a try, maybe.
Yeah, and well, also, if sort of top-down RPGs, for instance, put you off, Breath of the Wild, which is also on my list because it had to be, it breaks a lot of the conventions of JRPGs and a lot of the conventions of Zelda.
Okay.
Simply by the fact that there's no set narrative. You can play the different levels and areas in any order you can manage. There's kind of a recommended path, but
okay.
People have made a speedrunning community out of going from the starting area straight to the boss fight.
Oh wow!
The final boss fight.
That seems pretty full on.
Yeah, it is. It really is. But. Yeah, and it was kind of, my partner and I were both playing it, and it was the whole reason we bought 2 Switches.
Okay.
Was to play Breath of the Wild, because we were discussing whether we needed 1 or 2 Switches, and he said, "Oh, Zelda looks really good," and I said, "Okay, yeah, but do we need 2 Switches?" He said, "Oh no, I'll just wait until you finish it." I'm like, "Will you really be able to sit there watching me play it until I finish it without wanting to play yourself?" And he's like, I think we need 2 Switches. It's like, boom, there we are. And then Splatoon 2 was announced, and it was, that we were done. It was like, okay, 2 Switches. Has to be.
I mean, I did get the Elder Scrolls for the Switch.
Right, yep.
And because Lee, that I used to do the Blue Box podcast with, is a huge fan of that game. And I just found it really deathly dull.
Right.
I'm a bad person, I know. It's okay. I'm going to go to hell for this, but I really.
To be honest, I've never played it. I've never played. Okay. So this is a safe place. I bought it for one of my nephews, and he is loving it. But I've never played it myself. So I can't really comment. I was going to say people have compared the two, but that probably isn't gonna give you much of a recommendation, really.
No, not really. No, I like what I've seen of Breath of the Wild. It does look amazing. So maybe I will give it another turn. However, on a slightly more positive note,
yes,
one of my other real favourites, which it's a bit of a theme that comes across on the Switch. It's a port from the Wii U, because obviously not that many people have the Wii U, so they've invested a lot of money into creating some really good games.
Yeah.
So why not put them out on the Switch? And that's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yes.
I think that's such a fun game.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah. From my perspective, as a parent, it's great that for me and my son to be able to spend some time, and my wife gets to spend some time on the Switch as well. We let her play occasionally. She sometimes gets to have a go. I love the idea that you can customize the controls so that if you've got someone who's quite new to gaming, you can vary the amount of assistance they need. So there's an option to where you can't go off the side of the track, or there's an option where it will keep you going forwards. You don't have to keep holding the button down to accelerate. And I just think that's such a great idea because it then involves a much wider range of players. And I think that's such a cool idea, which just opens it up to everyone. I love it. I think it's just such a great game. Anyway, you were going to say something really interesting.
Oh, not really, but I totally agree with you on the point of accessibility and allowing for different skill levels. I was just going to say who's your go-to character and like kart combination.
I'm quite old school. I like to go for more of a standard kart rather than any of the slightly more outlandish ones. Although I have been known to get a motorbike every now and again. Mm-hmm. And who do I normally plump for? Toad is a favourite. Mm-hmm. I like Toad. Yeah. Or maybe Mario or Luigi. Pretty old school, pretty standard. But and yourself?
Well, it's kind of weird. Like Mario Kart 64, which was my first Mario Kart game. Always Wario. Always Wario, because I'd just gotten, I think, Super Mario Land 3, which was Wario's first solo game, and I was just obsessed with Wario. Every subsequent Mario Kart game, I can't play as Wario. Like, I just lose and lose and lose. So in this one, it's Roy, who is one of the Koopalings.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
He's the one named after Roy Orbison with the big pink sunglasses.
Nice, yeah.
And I play on the jet bike.
Okay.
Which, kind of looks like something Evel Knievel would ride. With cyber slick tires.
Nice.
And the flower glider.
Of course.
But, again, you mentioned,
I like the flying squirrel. I think that's really cute.
Yeah, the flying squirrel's cute. You mentioned your wife is occasionally plays. Yeah. Rod kind of likes Mario Kart. But why do there have to be all these weapons getting in the way? Like, the thing he hates about Mario Kart
half the fun.
Is the thing that makes it Mario Kart.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's kind of, I kind of see his point, because in Smash Brothers, of course, you can switch off items. It's like, why not in Mario Kart? But yeah, before the Switch came out, he would play Mario Kart 7 on 3DS, and his favorite was the time trial mode, because he could just drive and enjoy the track and be able to see things. So he did buy Mario Kart 8 when it came out, and I think he's played it for about 5 hours, and that's it. And I've offered to sell it.
Well, he's got to have a break from Splatoon now and again.
Exactly. Yeah, well, he tends to find like indie games on the shop, and that's his Splatoon break. So at the moment, we've just both done Lifeless Planet, and that was really good. But at the moment, it's an RPG called Cat Quest, because he loves cats.
Well, who doesn't love cats? They're the best animals in the world.
That's right.
Mine is sitting behind me at the moment as we record.
Oh, we don't have one because we live on a 4th floor flat, so it wouldn't be wouldn't get enough exercise.
It's not the best. No.
Yeah, but we're gonna get a cat one day.
Life goals.
Exactly.
So with Mario Kart, we have a GameCube, which is linked into our TV as well, and my son really loves playing Double Dash, which, when you consider what we were saying before about the Mario Kart 8 having all the accessibility bits on it, Double Dash is fairly unforgiving, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't give you an awful lot, but he loves playing that, and he's really good at it as well.
I do remember it being a lot harder than Mario Kart 64. Yeah. So much so that I remember at the time, so I think it was released around, I want to say 2002, I seem to recall at the time I was kind of put off by it and didn't play it much. I've gone back and played it more later, but yeah, it was a big jump, and I remember a lot of people didn't like the sort of 2-person mechanic. And I think I was a bit ambivalent about it then. I love it now. Like, I occasionally pull out
I just think it's something really different.
Yeah, I occasionally pull out my GameCube and play it and love it now. And again, it's something I've played with my partner who's not big on Mario Kart games, because I can just say to him, okay, you just focus on driving and I'll be gunner.
Yeah.
And, he still hates the blue shell, of course, but, what can you do?
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah. And the thing is, I've also tried showing him Mario 64, and he's just like, that looks terrible. I'm not playing that. And it's like, this was state of the art in 1997.
Yeah, don't you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good. I think it's a really good game, and I think the GameCube again was another one of these consoles that maybe got overlooked at the time, because I think it was around the same time as the PS2 came out, and obviously PS2 was all singing, all dancing, and had DVD and the rest of it. But I think, as you were saying before, for sheer gameplay, I think there's some really cracking games on the GameCube.
Yeah. I mean, the PS2, in terms of consoles, kind of invented the idea of shovelware for consoles.
Yeah.
Whereas in the following generation, it was the Wii that did that. There were lots of games on the Wii that was just not great and very, very much rushed to market, which, helped the Wii cement its place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, I mean, Nintendo had successes but not smash hits in the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube. So for the Wii to come along and then be this massive thing, despite the fact it was competing against the PS3 and the Xbox 360 with full HD graphics and, Bloom, I think, was the big thing then. Yeah. And then, as we've alluded to earlier, kind of squander it with the Wii U, but then get it back again with the Switch. It's really heartening to see, but yeah, I mean, the Wii was kind of an oasis in the wilderness, if you like, for Nintendo.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think we can say failure of the Wii U had to be a massive wake-up call. Like, did you watch at the time the Switch reveal video?
Ooh, I know I watched a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I must have seen it, I guess, but I'm getting on a bit now, so
Fair enough.
Memory's not what it used to be, but go on, elaborate.
Well, just I remember watching it because, as I say, I'm a huge Nintendo fan. My supervisor at the time, the job I was working on, she's a big gamer, and Nintendo had sort of done a pre-announcement saying, we're going to announce something, and there were all these rumors of the NX, as it was called at that stage, Nintendo Switch. And so we could afford to take a little time out of work that day. I think the video was like 5 minutes long. I don't think it was very long. And so we kind of put the Do Not Disturb sign up on the door of our joint office and hunkered down for the live stream. And she hadn't bought the Wii U, but I'd bought the Wii U. And I could see all the problems with the Wii U, like the lack of proper portability, the giant chunky controller. All of these things were then solved by the device. And then they take the controllers off the side. And we kind of lost it a little bit. We're like, what is this? What is this magic? And it's like, 2 separate controllers.
Yeah.
2-player right out the box. And then
so innovative.
Yeah, and then the internet blew up with this thing. And yeah, it's just gone from strength to strength since then. They're making some really smart cooperative decisions with Microsoft.
Yeah.
And
you get the occasional bit of grumbling about the online side of it, and I can kind of understand that to a degree. You know, if you have a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, and you're used to the kind of seamless thing where, you know, you're interacting with all your friends, and then you come to the Switch, it's not all that it could be.
Yeah.
But they've focused so much on the games rather than making it a multimedia machine. They've really focused on getting the games right, and I think that's really proved to be a really wise choice.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, the online is the Switch's main problem, because unlike server-based games, for Nintendo's own online games, they use peer-to-peer matching, which, so in Splatoon, one player is hosting the game. So if they drop out, the entire game drops out. And so, I mean, generally, as I understand it, Nintendo will try to have, the player with the strongest internet connection host the game.
Yeah.
But that also means if we in Australia are playing someone in Japan, we have a better connection with them than if we're playing with someone in the US.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. Whereas if there's dedicated servers, you don't get that so much. But at the same time, the online subscription is much cheaper than the competition.
Yeah, I know. It's great for what it is, you know.
Yeah, and
I think the other thing I see is perhaps people sometimes moan about, you know, there aren't any SNES games available as part of the package. You're really sort of focusing on the 8-bit games. But I suppose if you look at it from Nintendo's point of view, they've had so much success from the NES Mini, the SNES Mini. Are they going to want to put all of their really top-class retro games for free when you can sell, you know, for what is still, I think, a pretty reasonable price, a little mini console that has most of the best games on it?
That is true. But I made a joke on Twitter the other day when the Mana collection came out, actually, and people were really excited about that. You know, I imagined the conversation being, you know, Nintendo have this catchphrase when they're explaining why something's been delayed or why something doesn't exist. They use the phrase "please understand." So my tweet was, you know, please understand that we hear your desire for Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, and GameCube games. Here are some NES games. Whereas Square Enix, Konami, and Sega are like, hey, yeah, here's our back catalogue with rewind and save states and different graphics modes, and you can play Virtua Racer with 8 characters and online. You know, here's Alex Kidd with rewind buttons and extra challenges. Here's the Mana collection, and you can play it, and it looks like an original Game Boy. And I just kind of go, Nintendo will release these games that other publishers make.
Yeah.
But they won't create their own collections. Because I was so certain when the NES Mini originally sold out, I think it was like 9 months to produce more, which is great. It's awesome. Yeah. And I'm still convinced the reason there was an undersupply is after the failure of the Wii U, Nintendo were like, we're not taking any chances.
No, that's it.
But the thing that shocked...
It's understandable.
Yeah, the thing that shocked me was that they made it again, rather than, say, on the Switch going, okay, for $100 you can buy the physical unit, or for $80 you can buy this collection of all these games on the Switch, and it functions in exactly the same way. And because I'm slightly obsessed by spreadsheets, I have a spreadsheet which with little tick boxes to indicate whether something's available on the NES Mini or the Nintendo Switch Online service. And they still haven't released all the NES Mini games on the Nintendo Switch Online service, which it just strikes me as odd. You know, some games like Mega Man 2 or Final Fantasy owned by other people, yeah, I kind of get it. But yeah, so for instance, it's things like, you know, it launched with a small amount of games and they're adding more. But some of the games they're adding more of, like Super Mario Bros. 2 wasn't on there for a while. And Zelda 1 and 2 weren't on there for a while. It's like, I'm pretty sure you have the code for these. You know, like Square Enix said last week, basically, we want to release our entire back catalogue on modern systems, and everyone said, yay! And Square Enix says, one of the problems, however, is we don't know where some of the code is. And people kind of like, what? And they said, we're not going to tell you which ones, but there are some games where we have had to borrow cartridges from people and reverse engineer the code.
Wow.
And it's like, that's a big admission for a company to make.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I just want my Switch to have everything on it. You know, and I know
Well,
that's
if you think
a big
back to
ask.
the Wii, you had the Virtual Console, and you could buy sort of classic games and download them onto your machine. So I don't understand why they can't kind of filter that into their eShop, or, well, I don't know, maybe there's some sort of technical reason why they can't do it, but
They had,
I don't know, it does seem a bit strange.
They had Whizball for the Commodore 64
Yeah.
on the Wii. And The Last Ninja and all those amazing things.
Ah, great game.
Yeah. And, you know, we're starting to see it now, and Konami have just done 3 awesome collections. So they've done an arcade collection, they've done a Castlevania collection, and oddly enough, the arcade collection is 7 shoot-'em-up games and a Castlevania game, and which is not in the Castlevania collection. And they've just released a Contra collection as well.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and now, of those, the only one I'm really interested in is the Castlevania collection, but they got such a massive reception, and the reviews have been really good for those as well. I've made lists of the collections I want Nintendo to release. It's like, you know, we had Super Mario All-Stars back in the day.
Yeah.
We could have a Super Mario 2D collection and a Super Mario 3D collection and a Mario Galaxy collection, you know. All these lovely things. I just want these lovely things, Mark.
That's not too much to ask.
No. You know, as I say, I've got...
I think Sega brought out a collection of some of their better games as well.
Yes, that's true.
I seem to remember.
And they've got their Sega Ages line with, you know, I was referring earlier, Virtua Racers just come out or coming out at the end of this month.
I picked up Outrun for about £3 on
Yeah.
the eShop, and it's so much fun. It's such, you know, there's a lot of nostalgia with that game for me. I remember putting so many coins into the arcade machine back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be done. Just, you know, we love Nintendo, you know, we love everything about the Switch. Just, you know, just that one fine little thing you could do just to make us love it that little bit more. We're not asking much. We just, you know, want all your entire back catalogue.
Yeah, exactly.
On the machine. We'll give you money for it. We don't want it for free, you know. We'll pay a going rate.
Have you played Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle?
Yes.
Yes. That's another one I need to get back to, because I hit a hard point and got frustrated. But I do remember a review of that, if you're familiar with the reviewer Yahtzee Croshaw with Zero Punctuation.
Oh, no.
He does these funny... I was going to say slightly lewd, but no, they're incredibly lewd reviews of games. And I seem to recall the beginning of his Mario and Rabbids review is phrased like, so, Nintendo have basically released an XCOM game. Oh, okay. Oh, it's got the Rabbids in it. Oh, I can tolerate that. And Mario. Oh, Nintendo, you just couldn't help yourselves, could you? You don't have to stick Mario in everything. He's already got a party and a karting franchise and a popular gyro stand down by the wharf. But no, he has to be in this XCOM spin-off.
I think, didn't they give that to a third party to develop as well?
Yeah,
I seem to remember.
Well, yeah, that was Ubisoft. And
that's right.
Who, of course, own Rayman and therefore the Rabbids. And Ubisoft kind of developed the pitch without telling Nintendo and fully expected to be shot down. And Nintendo kind of went, "Oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
You know, we'll do this." But the biggest sticking point for them was, Mario with a gun? That's a bit weird. And so, you know, the guns become kind of cartoony Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Marvin the Martian ray guns. and it's fine, and it does fit, and it works. You know.
Yeah, it's a neat little game as well.
Yeah, I do need to get back to it because it is so lovely and so charming.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, again, it's turn-based, which kind of puts me off a bit, but the charm of it works really well.
Yeah, no, it won me over, that's for sure. If we're talking charm, I don't think we can ignore Yoshi's Crafted World. I think that's such a cute game.
Yes, I've only played the demo so far just because I'm trying to clear some of my backlog. I haven't bought it yet.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got Octopath for starters.
Oh,
but,
God,
you've got a fair few to get through. But no, I really adore it. I think the graphic style is just absolutely beautiful. It's so lovingly rendered. You know, it looks really good. And I've missed out on the was it Woolen World?
Yeah, Yoshi's Woolly World. Yeah. Which I did have and finished, and that was absolutely charming and amazing. And Crafted World, because as I say, I've only played the demo, but the demo's got a good 45 minutes of gameplay.
There's a decent chunk of it there, isn't it? Yeah.
And
my son adores it as well because he loves Yoshi.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how with the Yoshi series, so Yoshi's Island, I remember as a teenager was incredibly hard. You know, it had a really steep learning curve. It had a constantly crying baby if you got hit. Yeah, there was some dark imagery in there. And now
I have a Game Boy Advance SP that still works, and I've got the cartridge for it on that. So play it from time to time, but it's a tough one.
It is, but the Yoshi series has now pivoted, and it is aiming itself towards younger gamers, but it strikes that rare balance of, so, you know, you've got the mellow mode in Yoshi where
that's right.
You know, you can't be hurt and whatnot, but there is still, I think the challenge there for adult players now is sort of 100%ing things.
Yeah.
You know, and in Woolly World, there are still collectibles I haven't managed to get because I just can't see a way to get them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I really like the gameplay. I think it's quite an interesting idea that you kind of flip the levels around. So as well as going from side to side like a traditional platformer, you're going in and out of the screen as well. And it does frustrate me when I'm playing with my son because he finds it hilarious to swallow my character and then spit him out again. And that doesn't get grating at all after about the 20th time of that happening.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, you know, when he's feeling in the mood to actually cooperate, it's a fun game to play together. But I really would recommend it if you love platforming games. It's so cute. It really is just a great little game.
Yeah, I mean, when I get around to it, I'm so looking forward to it. I'll just, you know, it'll be a sunny day game. Like, it's going to make me smile.
Yeah. I'm surprised we've got this far through our conversation and not mentioned Mario Odyssey yet.
Right, yeah, well, you know, I did make a list and I thought about putting it on there, and I just thought, yeah, as you say, we're just going to get to it, you know. So good. So good. You know, I have such fond memories of Mario 64. I think I've 100%ed Mario 64 about 6 times. On the Nintendo 64 and on the DS remake, and again on the Wii U. And you know,
wow,
I don't mind admitting this. When I 100%ed it on the Wii U, I actually cried. Because it just gave me this rush of emotion. I remembered completing it when I was 13, and then I remembered completing it again when I was 20. And yeah, it was just an incredibly emotional experience. And Mario Odyssey has been the first 3D Mario game since then that gave me the same buzz as Mario 64.
It does feel like a natural successor, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't mind Mario Sunshine. I think it's, you know, it's fun for what it is, but I don't think it's a patch on either of 64 or Odyssey. I think they're both in a different league.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I loved Sunshine at the time. I loved the Mario Galaxy games.
Oh yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, even Mario 3D World. which was a bit more limited in its 3D aspect and 3D
that's a
movement.
game I'd like to see them port over, but not heard anything about that yet coming to the Switch.
Yeah, I mean, they've got assets for it in the upcoming Super Mario Maker, so I reckon that hopefully might lead to an announcement. And, I'd buy it again.
Yeah. It looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, it really was. I mean, its appeal came less from sort of full roaming to you kind of feel like you're in a little model set.
Yeah.
It's kind of a terrarium environment, which was really fun. But yeah, Mario Odyssey, it just felt so fresh and innovative. And the one reservation I had about it, and this is going to be oddly specific, right? From the trailers, it looked to me like Cappy was going to be a sort of stereotypical smart Alex sidekick, and would kind of be making jokey asides about being in a video game and whatnot. And that often falls flat. But instead, Cappy is just this sort of likable character, also on a mission. And it doesn't interject too much. I know you haven't played Zelda games, as you say, but there's sort of a gaming meme with the fairy companion from Zelda Ocarina of Time constantly saying, "Hey, listen!" Which really starts to grate on the nerves.
Yeah, I can't imagine that would get annoying at all.
Yeah, whereas Cappy just sort of gives you general prompts. Like, you go into an area and he'll either say, "Oh, I think there's still moons to collect here," or, "Oh, I think we're done here." Which is it's a really innovative way to keep track. So is this another one that you play with your son? Because I know there's a co-op mode.
We've not really played it together. So maybe that might be one to go back to.
Yeah.
I mean, I've completed all the worlds, but I haven't got all the moons because I'm not sure I have enough time in my lifetime to go around and get them all.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Because I think there's 999. Yeah.
I can't remember how many I got. I've got a fair few, but it's such a fun game.
Yeah, yeah.
I love my particular favourite part is where you have to go up the tower, the sort of the big skyscraper.
Yeah.
And they start playing the music and it goes very retro and it turns into the sort of 8-bit version again. As the kids would say, you get all the feels as you're going through that level. Just so much fun.
I won't spoil it by describing what the final battle is. But there is a bit in the final battle where they have actually written a rock song which plays, and playing through that bit, I was laughing my head off with glee, not laughing at the song. I've gone onto iTunes and I've bought it, and it's one of my morning motivation songs.
Nice.
Especially the Japanese version.
Oh, right.
And yeah, also, the bit you're talking about, there was an original song there, Jump Up Superstar, which is just ridiculously toe-tapping and makes you feel nice and fuzzy.
Yeah.
It is a nice, and it's a game about gaming. Those little 8-bit sections are, saying, "Hey, remember this."
Yeah.
And I've talked about this on Flight Through Entirety. There's a fine line in nerddom and geekdom where you invoke something that the viewer or the player will love. And there's the Ready Player One way, the movie version, I mean, where it's kind of like, "Hey, here's that thing you like."
Yeah.
And it's like, he's like, "Yes, I do like that thing. What new thing are you doing with it?" Whereas I feel like the 8-bit sections in Mario Odyssey, it's a gameplay mechanic. It gets you from one point to another, usually. But it's like they've gone, okay, what happens inside a warp pipe?
Yeah.
And so it gives you this new idea. It brings some of the enemies and mechanics of 3D Mario into a 2D space.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. It takes this thing you're nostalgic for and does something new with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't speak highly enough of it. It's such a great game. That's the one that came packaged with my Switch when I bought it.
Oh, right. Oh,
and,
so do you have those lovely exclusive red Joy-Cons?
I do indeed. I also got some Splatoon ones as well. The bright green and the bright pink as well, because they're just really cool.
Actually, Splatoon-related thing, let me tell you how much Splatoon Rod has played. He got the special Splatoon Pro controller.
Yeah, no, we have that too.
He's broken the thumbstick.
Holy guacamole.
I need to send it in for repair.
Oh, no.
Because he was playing with the Plain Black Pro controller. I'm like, oh, your controller's over there. He's like, no, it doesn't go forward anymore. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
Thing is, I remember this now. He did it to the Wii U as well. We had to send the gamepad in for repair. I'd forgotten that. And I remember it.
Man.
And because, his Switch is his, so if something bad happens to it, fine. Well, not fine, but you know what I mean. Where he was so apologetic with the Wii U gamepad. I'm like, it happens. Yeah, when you play this as much as you do, this happens. And he paid to have it repaired, which was fine. But I'm just like, I've been gaming for 35 years, and 30 years, I should say. I've never broken a controller.
No.
In Rage or in anything else. They've made some disturbing cracking sounds, but I've never broken one.
I can remember using the controllers, the joysticks on the original Atari VCS, or that they rebranded the 2600. My God, your hands would feel like nothing on earth by the time you finished playing. If you played for any serious length of time. There was no such thing as micro switches back then. It was just you really had to push the stick at all to make it go in the direction you wanted it to.
Yeah.
They're really iconic for their time. You look at the photos of them, they look amazing, but they were not much fun to play with.
Yeah, I've got one of those Atari flashback consoles, and they've actually it's a wireless Atari joystick, but they've replicated it very well. Like, I'm sure it does have micro switches inside now, but the feel is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Nice. So, anything else that you're really a fan of on the Switch?
It's not a Switch exclusive, and it's a bit of a curate's egg, if you like. Ukulele.
Yeah.
And I definitely acknowledge its flaws. I backed it on Kickstarter, and the flaw people point out with it is they set out to make basically Banjo-Kazooie 3, but with new characters.
Yeah.
And you know what? This plays exactly like a rare character-based platformer from 2001 would play. For good.
Which is no bad thing.
Yeah, but, for good and for ill. Like, controls have gotten tighter in the last 15 years.
Yeah, the camera could be a bit iffy on some of those games, but
the camera on this is so frustrating. It's really weird because if you're standing kind of next to a pillar, the camera won't sort of adjust and move behind the pillar. You'll just try and turn it, and it'll go, no, I can't go any further. And so the thing I find myself saying in this so often is the camera is not a physical object. It shouldn't have collision detection. But I put it down for a long time, and I've recently come back to it, and I had this moment last week. So I played it for about 10 hours. I had this moment last week where I was in an underwater level, and it was just really cleverly designed, and the puzzle solving was really good. I'm like, okay, no, this clicks with me now. This really clicks. But then there's also these minecart sections, and I went straight to one of those. And for anyone who's played Donkey Kong Country games, you'll know what I'm talking about with these kind of minecart games. And 5 minutes later, I'm just screaming at the television because this minecart stage is a loop. And if you miss the jump to get off the loop, you're going around again. to the point that I couldn't figure this out. I thought I'd taken every route, and I had to look up a play guide. And while I looked up the play guide, I didn't pause. I just let it go around and around and around and around. But it is charming. It is sweet. You know what? Laylee the Bat is a sarcastic sidekick, but the humor is actually really funny. Like, it's almost Deadpool levels of funny.
Okay.
But without the swearing. And they poke fun at the fact that there are so many things to collect. You are sometimes quizzed on how many things you've collected to access different areas in the game. The worlds are expandable. So first of all, you have to collect a certain amount of pages in this game. They're the main sort of thing, like stars in Mario. You have to collect a certain amount of pages to unlock game worlds, but then you have to collect more pages to expand the game world.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a really new concept. And they've just announced a sequel, which is going to be a 2D platformer. And I looked at the gameplay for that, and I thought, you know what? As much as I love 3D platformers, I think this is the way forward for this series, because it just has utter bags of charm, and I think switching it to 2D will tighten it up. I would say don't buy it for full price. Definitely buy it on sale.
They do get some quite regular offers on the eShop, which I think is good.
It's astounding.
I guess it encourages you to... They are pretty good like that, And I know we both had a little bit of a knock at Nintendo now and again, but on the whole, they're pretty good.
Yeah. It's like having a knock at Nintendo is less like sort of saying to Sony, what do you mean I can't play cross-platform in Fortnite? Having a knock at Nintendo is, oh, Nintendo, what are you like? It's a loving kind of reaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember when the Wii came out, and just there was a controversy surrounding each system in that generation, and of course the Xbox 360 had the red ring of death, where the system would suddenly fail for no really apparent reason. The PlayStation 3 very quickly dropped back compatibility with the PS2 and PS1.
Yeah.
Which was a big controversy.
Yeah.
The Wii's controversy, I remember, was the wrist straps on the Wii remotes were very thin and would sometimes snap, so Nintendo arranged a free replacement with a thicker wrist strap. That was the launch controversy for the Wii.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of feel is still the case now. It's like the complaints you could make about Nintendo.
Yeah.
I think
pretty small fry, really.
Yeah, and I do agree in terms of processing power that Sony and Microsoft are the two bigger players. The Switch is catching up to them. But when you look at, things like the Mass Effect Andromeda debacle or No Man's Sky, which I know is an independent thing, but, their big thing was, you need a really powerful system to play this. And the developers have so made good on that game, by the way.
Yeah.
But the criticism Nintendo attracts is, it's really, as you say, small fry compared to the
and
big
you look
consoles.
at what it can do as well. I mean, there's some... It's not really something I would tend to play that much, but things like Wolfenstein and Doom look incredible on the Switch.
Yeah, again, they're not...
When we consider the horsepower it's got compared to the other two.
Yeah, there are some really smart studios now doing conversions for the Switch, including, I think... Yeah, the Wolfenstein games and Doom games have both been handled, I want to say, by M2, I think have done the conversion on those. But I could be getting that confused, and they could be doing arcade conversions. But yeah, whoever is shrinking these games down to fit on the Switch are doing an amazing job.
Yeah, they really are. It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's just been revealed that The Witcher 3 is coming.
Yeah,
and
it's another huge game, isn't it?
Yeah, there were rumours about the Red Dead games coming, the Red Dead Redemption games.
Yeah,
it's quite extraordinary. And you know what? You do take a performance hit. And even for Breath of the Wild, there had to be some patches early on because of frame rate issues.
Yeah.
But And, I got some really quite severe ones of those, which did lead to my death. But
Oh, God.
even then, the other thing that led to my death was I had 4 hearts and I jumped in the middle of 4 enemies with lightning weapons. It wasn't entirely
that's
due
not
to
gonna
the
help.
frame rate issue. But yeah, even then, with Nintendo, I think you have always paid for the experience, and especially the experience of their first-party titles.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
hurry up and bring back F-Zero.
Yeah, I love that game. Such a great game.
Yeah. Oh, and for any fans of Star Fox,
great memories.
definitely get Starlink.
Yeah, that was going really cheap for a while there. I don't know if it's still... it's about 20 quid, because it comes with the whole physical spaceship, doesn't it? And you have to change it. A bit like... what was it called? Is it Disney Infinity?
Oh, yeah.
And then you had...
Skylanders.
The Lego.
And Lego.
Lego Dimensions, which I loved.
Yeah, I got that specifically for the Doctor Who content. That's
me
the
too,
only reason I got it. And the Doctor Who content is amazing.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Josh Snares, who's a very good Doctor Who YouTuber, did a video on the history of Doctor Who games and basically went, the best Doctor Who video game there is a Lego game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great.
It's crazy.
One of our previous guests, Ben, was on a show a couple of episodes back. He was recommending Josh for his videos about the missing episodes.
Yeah.
So, the second person, relatively quick amount of time to recommend his channel. It's really good. I've watched a lot of his shows, and they're very well put together.
Yeah, I am in awe of him. Because, as I said earlier, I need to start updating my channel. I don't think I've put up a video in 3 months. And he is putting up weekly content of a very high standard.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and you know what? He is attracting attention in the right quarters. Doctor Who Magazine have publicised him. Lots of Doctor Who writers and creatives have praised him for his work. And I say good on him, because the praise is very well deserved.
Very much so.
Yeah, I first found him... and then found him again through his missing episode stuff. But I first found him, he did this recreation of the K9 and Company titles.
Nice.
So, and yeah, he's just in this ratty...
how can you improve on that classic?
Well, with a cardboard K9 and a really ratty wig. But it's a shot-for-shot remake with him as Elizabeth Sladen.
Oh, fantastic.
And I'm laughing just thinking about it. After we finish up, I'm actually going to go watch it because it is just such a feel-good piece. Because...
I need to do that.
The whole reason I found that was I had a thought to do it myself, but I went on YouTube to look to see if anyone else had done it, and I saw his one, and I just went, there is no way I can improve in any way, shape, or form on this. and he has threatened to bring the character back, so
nice.
we may be seeing more of Cardboard K9 very soon.
Or maybe you could see if anyone's done a remake of Doctor in Distress.
Oh my god! I do remember when Jodie Whittaker was announced. There were some very good mocking takes on the Not My Doctor people, and my two favorites were, because there was the hashtag Not My Doctor, and but someone came up with the great tweet of, it's Doctor, not Doctor. To which the spoof tweet was a reply of, it's Doctor in Distress, not Doctor in a Dress. And
nice.
And of course that spoof tweet got a much higher retweet than the original stupid wordplay.
Especially when the person who penned that particular musical ditty was not overly fond of the idea of a woman being the Doctor either.
Yeah, I do love that Ian Levine's kind of excuse for the way that the K9 and Company theme turned out was, he's like, I never intended it for it to be synth. Yeah, I sent that
Because
in
the
as
rest of his output at that time was not synth heavy at all.
yeah, but he's kind of like, yes, I sent in a synth, and he's since released the original demo, which actually sounds better than what we got.
Okay.
But he's like, I sent in the synth demo, which is very piano heavy, and he's like, I expected it to be recorded with, real instruments.
Yeah.
And I think you can find the original demo on Amazon, and it actually has a slightly Sapphire and Steel vibe to it, which is funny. It's a bit spookier.
Okay.
But yeah, sort of when he released that, he's like, I hadn't said this for years because I didn't want to denigrate anyone, but it was meant to be real instruments. It wasn't meant to be Peter Howell attacking a synth, or was it Paddy Kingsland attacking a synthesizer?
Oh, I think. Yeah, I think it was Paddy Kingsland.
Yeah, and normally I love Paddy Kingsland, like the driving music in Mordred Undead.
Yeah, yeah, that's nails down the chalkboard.
Mind you, I'm the guy who likes Kef McCulloch, so what do I know?
Oh my god! Right, get out now.
When I'm on my bicycle, the music that's going through my head is the cycling chase from Sharda.
Nice, yeah.
Although I have to say that Mark Ayres surpassed himself.
Didn't he just?
With the music for Sharda. Like the reprise of the running through Paris music for cycling through Cambridge. In the cinema with the Flight Through Entirety crew, pretty much simultaneously, Richard and I started singing under our breath, cycling through Cambridge, we're cycling through. Because we are sad fans. That is what we are.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Speaking as a sad fan myself. I mean, my last, getting back onto the subject.
Yes.
My last really big game that I feel, is you couldn't talk about the Switch without mentioning is Smash Brothers, because that is such a huge game on the Switch.
Yeah. And we're finally getting Banjo.
I know you were saying you're not a big fighting game player, but I think there's a lot of people who wouldn't normally play a fighter who would play Smash Brothers.
Yeah, well, I'm terrible at fighting games, and I have Smash Brothers. And I love Smash Brothers. And there's a monthly gaming night here in a bar, and every few months it's Smash Brothers. And I'm always terrible at it. I never win anything. But it is so much fun to play.
It is.
And I'm getting really good with Simon Belmont.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is funny because I'm not very good at Castlevania games at all.
Well, Captain Falcon seems to be my go-to character. Yeah. I seem to be able to sort of pull off a lot of his moves.
He's good.
So, yeah. But the love and care that's gone into making that game, and just the sheer volume of characters you've got to choose from, and the whole mechanic of unlocking more players, and it's just such a brilliantly put together game.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest and say it's 6 months since release, and I haven't unlocked everyone yet.
No, I'm not even close to doing that. But it is a lot of fun to pick up and play.
But I discovered some charts online for unlocking order, so I've unlocked the ones I want, that I really want.
Okay, yeah.
And anything now is a bonus. But I want to be good at Mega Man because I love Mega Man. But I'm terrible. I'm terrible as Mega Man.
Yeah.
He just does. The problem is, like, most of his attacks are projectile based. And, I know there's some customization in there, but it turns out I, don't use projectile based attack that much, and I just have to deal with that. I mean, Belmonts have some, they do have some, but they also have melee attacks. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you haven't decided to pick the Piranha Plant as your player of choice?
You know what? I have played with Piranha Plant a few times, and it's
kind of fun.
It's really good. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of my criteria for a character is their up B, which for those listeners who don't understand what this means, the objective in Smash Brothers isn't necessarily to whittle down a life bar, it's to knock your opponents off the stage, and the more damage they take, the easier they are to knock. So there's a situation where you might be very far away from the stage and need to get back, and the up B attack is usually an attack which sends you higher into the air, so you can get back to the stage. Most characters, but not all, that attack also does damage. Yeah. And that's my criteria. And that's also my problem with Mega Man. His default attack for that, you can customize it, but his default attack for that does no damage, whereas the Piranha Plant sort of flaps its little leaves, and anyone in the way gets slapped. And the Belmonts, and I think Captain Falcon sort of have an uppercut style move.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of my criteria for picking a character is their up B, their recovery move, has to do some kind of damage. Because I'm usually going badly. There's usually someone jumping off the stage towards me to knock me off it, so I'm going to need to do some damage to them.
Mario's pretty good like that too. I think he does like an uppercut sort of effort.
Yes.
If I remember right.
Yeah. On a recent trip to Japan, I finally picked up a Nintendo 64 Smash Brothers cartridge, because they go for stupid money here now. They go for like $100.
Yeah.
And I was having a particularly bad day because it wasn't quite a sprain, but almost sprained my ankle the first day in Japan.
Ooh.
And
yeah, that's not good.
It was particularly bad on this day, and I found the Smash Brothers cartridge in a second-hand shop for like 15 Australian dollars. And I went,
wow.
Okay, just buy it. I could find it cheaper elsewhere, but just buy it. Took it up to the counter. Yep, turns out it just happened to be half off that day.
Oh, wow.
And, so that just really gave me a bit of buoyancy because, as I say, it had been
a bit of karma coming back to you there.
Yeah, it had been a pretty bad day. And I was like, yeah.
Oh, that kind of made up for it.
Yeah. So I now have physically every Smash Brothers game.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. So is there anything else that you wanted to cover that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I've mentioned a few in passing. There's some really good what people call walking simulators on the Switch, where it's about sort of exploration more than weapons and whatnot. In that genre, I'd recommend Lifeless Planet and Gone Home.
Okay.
It hasn't come out on the Switch yet, but I think it's due by the end of the year. A great game called The Stanley Parable, which you find yourself alone in your office and there's no one else around.
Yeah.
And there's a narrator. And so the narrator will say things like, coming to a fork in the road, Stanley went through the door on his left. But then if you go through the door on the right, the narrator starts telling you off. And it just gets weirder from there.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I think those are the only other things I mentioned. Walking simulators, actually quite good. I quite enjoy them.
It sounds a little bit like a sort of updated point-and-click adventure. Some of those really nice Lucasfilm ones back in the day had that kind of humour to them.
Yes.
Where they were kind of pointing you in a particular direction, and you get sort of responses, humorous responses, depending on what your actions were.
Yeah, it's quite a bit like that. And actually, now that you come to mention that, Thimbleweed Park.
Oh yeah, I've played that. It's really good.
Yeah. I again, this is just my catchphrase. I need to finish that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not alone there. You're not alone there. Life gets in the way, doesn't it?
That's true.
Has a frustrating habit.
And new games get in the way.
Yeah, true. Okay, well, we're going to go for a commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to be asking Brendan for some of his recommendations for our listeners.
Terrific.
GameCube スーパーマリオ最高の大冒険がゲームキューブでついに実現。これがスーパージャンプだ。空へ海へ自由自在に飛び回れ。エンターテインメントの頂点へ。任天堂ゲームキューブスーパーマリオサンシャイン。ゲームキューブ新価格19,800円。
And welcome back. So we've come to that point where we're going to get Brendan to give us a few recommendations of things that we can check out. So What have you got for us, Brendan?
Well, I already mentioned zero punctuation reviews, which are very good. But I'm also going to recommend kind of the thing that inspired me to start making videos on YouTube, and that is a series called The Angry Videogame Nerd.
Oh yes, he's so good.
He is so very good.
Yeah.
And you know, I have been watching him since close to the beginning. I think I discovered him around 2008, a few years after he started. And and he has, so James Rolfe is his name, and he has developed this sort of YouTube media, I don't exactly want to say empire, but this YouTube network, if you like. So from the back of The Angry Videogame Nerd, he's done a board game series. He and his best mate do a different game every Monday where they just play the game and talk about it. And I believe that's live streamed and then they cut it down. He has branched out into movie reviews because cinema's his other passion.
Right.
But what has astounded me is occasionally he gets celebrity guests for the Videogame Nerd videos.
Yeah.
But he's not focused on getting conventional big name stars, but he's had the director Lloyd Kaufman when he was reviewing Toxic Avenger video games, because Lloyd Kaufman, one of the big honchos of trauma movies, which was sort of gross out horror movies in the 80s and 90s. They're still making them. And so he had Lloyd Kaufman playing these games. And of course, the Angry Videogame Nerd thing is that he's angry and he comes up with these incredible strings of invective.
Yeah.
I
saw one where... sorry to interrupt
Not
you.
at all.
I saw one where he was going to review the Home Alone games, and the doorbell goes, and the guy's there with a pizza, and it's Macaulay Culkin.
Yes, yeah.
So he sits down with Macaulay Culkin and plays every single one of the Home Alone games.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really hold back at all.
No. And Macaulay Culkin is wonderfully deadpan throughout the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing, Lloyd Kaufman, I get the impression watching that episode that Lloyd Kaufman was ad-libbing because James Rolfe keeps corpsing.
Right.
And I think there was one moment where in a Toxic Avenger video game, there's toilets falling on his head, and one of the nerd's things is, where's the logic in this? And Lloyd Kaufman, who, would not have had anything to do with the development of these video games, just says, oh, yeah. Oh, no, the toilets, we got them as a job lot when Graceland had to clear out after Elvis Presley died. There was one in every room. I mean, okay, I will presage this with a warning. If scatological humour and swearing is something that turns you off, don't go watch this channel.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't check it out. But, no, if your mind is in the gutter like mine and you enjoy that kind of level of humour, it's very fun.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm just trying to remember back to one of my favourites. One of my favourites is actually his Polybius video. And because it combines his two loves, and his loves are horror movies and video games. And Polybius is a video game which likely never existed, but there are rumours and stories that it was a mind control experiment by either the CIA and the KGB. And this video touches on those rumours in a very inventive way. And I actually found it, just the way he made it, I actually found it quite scary. So that would be my big recommendation, which combines a few of the things, we've talked about.
It's a really good recommendation. I haven't watched his stuff for a while, so I might have to go back and have a little look and see what he's come up with more recently. So I'm going to recommend something which is quite a niche recommendation, so I'm not expecting you to have heard of this. It's a podcast. And it's specifically about English Premier League football in the 1990s. It's called Quickly Kevin, Will He Score? It is presented by, there's a comedian called Josh Widdicombe, who's from my part of of England.
Yeah, I love Josh Widdicombe. Yep.
He's so funny. Yeah, so he's there as a couple of other guys. It's Chris Scull and Michael Marden. So the key thing, even if you aren't bothered about sport, even if you aren't interested in football, which a lot of people aren't, I would recommend this podcast to you just because A, it's very funny, but B, there's a series of, I think they've done 2 so far, so I think there's a third one still to come. There was a quite a famous footballer in the UK back in the 90s called Steve Bruce, who used to play for Manchester United. And he's gone on to become a manager and has been, relatively successful in that. But in the 90s, he decided he would try his hand at writing novels. And he brought out 3. There's one called Striker, one called Defender, and one called Sweeper. And they summarise these novels. I think you can still pick them up, but for silly money on eBay. And it's hilarious. If you think of Alan Partridge, but turned up to about 1,000%. It comes close to that. It's so funny. The main character is someone who used to play for a club that sounds very much like Manchester United, who then is a manager of a club called Leadersfield, and at the time he was a manager of Huddersfield. He then goes on to describe what the stadium looks like. It's a very distinctive stadium, which is exactly the same as the stadium where he was. And yeah, one of his star players is found murdered, and he is the prime suspect, and it's down to him to solve the case. And it is hilarious just listening to them going back over the story. It's absolute comedy gold. So even if you have no interest in sport, just check out those couple of episodes that they put out, and it's worth your time. It's so funny. So yeah, it's called Quickly Kevin, Will He Score? So that's my recommendation.
That sounds amazing.
You've got to hear it to believe it. You could go down the rabbit hole and end up actually buying these to read yourself, because it's scarily funny. It comes across, and they mention it when they're reviewing, and it sounds as though he had no kind of editor involved at any stage of the production of this novel. So yeah, it's worth checking out. Oh,
brilliant! I just love how he kind of writes himself into the role of Miss Marple or Jessica Fletcher. This talented amateur.
The other thing they find quite funny when they start sort of going over the details of the first book is that when you look at the fictional character's CV, he's done all the things that Steve Bruce did when he was a player, but he also won the Champions League, which Steve Bruce never did. So it's kind of like he's given himself that extra little bit of a bonus there as well.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's very funny. You should check it out. It's very good. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Brendan.
No worries.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
It's great to have you on, and if you'd like to come back another time, talk about something else, you're more than welcome. Is there anything you'd like to give a plug to before you go?
You can find our podcasts at flightthroughentirety.com, Flight Through Entirety on Facebook and Apple Podcasts, and at FTE Podcast on Twitter.
Excellent.
We also have bondfinger.com and jodieintoterror.com as well. They're on Twitter too. Probably the easiest way to find those, though, is go to at FTE Podcast and just add the others from there.
All the links will be there.
Yeah. And,
brilliant.
And if you want to see me tweet about inane things like Doctor Who and dogs, especially Shebas, you can find me on Twitter at Brandy Bongos.
Excellent.
Yeah, and the aforementioned YouTube channel, Brandinigma. I need to work on my branding. I need to pull everything tighter together so it's all one name.
Excellent. Thank you so much again. and we'll speak again soon.
Indeed, thank you. And by the way, everyone, if you're gonna buy Rime, don't buy it on the Switch. That version is terrible. Good night.
Oh no, it's awful. Yes, no, avoid at all costs.
How can the frame rate be this bad?